Well, good morning and welcome to our video here at Concordia Technology Solutions. My name is Peter Frank and I'm the manager here. I'm sure you've seen me on these videos many times. Thanks for joining us again. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of organization, and this is, I think, a topic that a lot of people think about and a lot of people feel like they're unorganized. For me, organization is something that I take very seriously and almost probably to a fault. But I always still feel unorganized. And today we're going to talk about organization within social media and planning out your content for that. So joining me today is Reverend Daniel Ross from Christ Lutheran in Topeka, Kansas. Daniel, thanks for joining me again today. Appreciate you being here.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Daniel's been on here many times and has been writing for the CTS blog for several years now, and you still have very enjoyable topics, and you put a little humor in there, which I appreciate. So on that note of humor, though, tell us the story that you put at the start of the post.
So I'm the opposite of you, Peter. I'm the guy that says, "What's the bare minimum organized I can be to get by?" And that was really apparent in sixth grade, actually all through middle school. They gave us these agendas that we were supposed to fill out every day, and every week, every Friday, or excuse me, every Monday, the teacher would sit there and Daniel, open up your agenda. It wouldn't be signed. It wouldn't be filled out. And she'd just be like, you know, and I remember just getting reminded over and over again, this is 5% of your grade. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, it's only 5% of my grade. And I'm in sixth grade. And 80 is, you still get the same letter grade with an 80 as an 89 in my mind. So for homeroom, a class that really doesn't matter, I wasn't really too worried about it. It was years later when I was actually in college and especially in seminary where the idea that she was trying to get across along with the school was that organization is a good thing. And so to keep track of things, when things are due or whatever, is actually a very good skill to have in life. Still a skill I struggle with, but
I was going to say, now that you've gone through college and seminary and all that, have you become more organized as a parish pastor, or is it still being like in sixth
if
grade?
if if Google Calendar ever goes down, I will not know what I'm supposed to do tomorrow.
But you
So
use Google
don't fail me,
Calendar, so.
Google. Well, I have my phone with me at all times, and it's multi-platform, so I don't have to worry about trying to, import it onto a PC or something like that if I was doing my iCal. So
Well,
I
that's
picked a multi-platform calendar. Everything goes in there.
very
That's
good.
how I get things done. So, and I
Well,
have
let's
to
talk.
say a shout out to CPH and CTS for the every year you guys put out the lectionary calendars that you can download onto Google Calendar, and I use that more than probably anything else. That resource, the readings for the next few weeks, things like that. So
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad that's helpful to you. And this idea of a calendar is really where we're going to focus today. So let's talk about being organized and using a content calendar. Where does that fit into being organized, and specifically within social media? So, as you plan out your content for social media, isn't the church year calendar enough, the thing that we put out every year?
no, because the church year calendar is great, and it gives you, uh, the seasons, the Sundays, festivals, things like that. But what are you going to do on that day? Are you going to do a Facebook Live video, or are you going to post a picture to Instagram? Um, what are you doing on what platforms when, and who is in charge of it? That all kind of ties into a content calendar and gives clarity to that, so that you don't feel like you're always running an uphill battle when it's 15 feet worth of snow and you're barefoot, but you it reduces stress greatly because you know what you're doing, who's doing it, and when it's happening. So
Good.
I
Well, we're going to get into the why, and then we're going to get into the how. And in your blog post, you go through a few steps for each of those, and I'm excited to have you walk us through that. But for those of you who are watching us live, if you've got questions for Daniel, please go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll take them at the end or take them midway if we can. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on managing and organizing your content for social media. And if there's ideas that you hadn't heard before, go ahead and let us know that, hey, I'm going to try that out now. So Daniel, if you could kind of walk us through each of those 5 reasons why it's important to have a social media content calendar.
The first is that with a social media content calendar, you're not going to miss important dates. Life gets really busy. You know, as a pastor, as a church worker, life gets really busy, and you know, you wake up at 4 p.m. It's Friday, and you realize next Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. Okay, so you quickly throw a post together, but it would be a lot easier if you knew it was coming up and you had time to plan, and you think in your mind, okay, well, I'll get the Ash Wednesday post together because it's 4 p.m. and I want to get out of the office here. And so then next week, because I gave myself bought myself a week's worth of time, I will put up the themes for the midweeks, and I'll work on that over the weekend. But things happen during the weekend, and so you forget or you miss them. And I have to ask myself, or ask you guys, and okay, my audio dropped, so
sorry, that was
making
me.
sure I was still there.
That was me responding to a comment and not wanting all my keyboard strokes to come across. Sorry about that.
Okay, all right. So you're not going to miss those important dates. You know, you'll because part of it is when you put on Christmas on there. Okay, you know it's December 25th, but what day does September 25th happen during the week? So it's going to give you guidance of when you want things to go on your social media accounts. And it's going to save you time. It's going to save you time because you're not scrambling at the last minute. You're not trying to pick what day or days and on what platforms that I'm going to do things. So when you wake up on Taco Tuesday and you realize that it's also Twitter Tuesday and you don't have a post ready to go, you don't have to sit there and say, okay, I'm not going to make a video real fast, and you know, do I have the time to go to Canva and create something, or has you know the Synod or National Youth Gathering, somebody like that, sent out a tweet, or should I put a reminder about, you know, the 65-year-old or Bowling League to my mostly millennial audience? It helps a lot with strategy in that sense. So you don't miss important days. It saves you time. Your content is organized. It gives you consistency, not just for the big dates, but also for the days in between. And social media, what every social media expert out there will tell you, the number one thing of getting the greatest reach with all your social media accounts is consistency. So having that consistency of posting and realizing with that consistency that some platforms publish if you over post in their eyes, and every platform basically punishes if you under post. So knowing and finding that balance is key for that. So it's organized, you know what you're publishing, where you're publishing it to, and when it is being published. And then this, in particular, if you're blessed enough to have volunteers or other church staff that help out on the social media accounts, you can assign who's doing what, so you're able to work together better. So I have been there where I've spent like 3 hours putting a post together, and I go to put it on Facebook, and somebody already did the post. So I wasted 3 hours.
Oh no.
Yeah, and that's not a great feeling to have, and I'm excited that, you know, obviously it's a great thing when people help out, but on the other hand, it's like, okay, we got to communicate a little bit better here. And so part of that would, you want to make sure your content calendar isn't just, written in your daily planner, but is on an accessible form, however you guys do that, however congregations do that, so that you are able to work together better. And then it helps you discover and track your more successful posts. And what I mean by that is, when you know what you posted when you posted it, you can go back and either weekly or monthly look at the reach stats for that. Okay, so if you created a video, what was your reach? How many people watched it? If you created an infographic and things like that. And so you're going to find what resonates better with your your target audience, so to speak, your audience of that on that social media platform. Because I don't know, but if you're like me, we post a couple times a week to our Facebook post, and every other day I get a notification saying that such and such post is outperforming 85% of all my other posts, which by my calculation should mean we're reaching millions of people. So I don't know when they reset that, and their mystery of an algorithm there. But you're not just relying on statistics that you have no clue how it comes about, because nobody knows how Facebook's algorithm works except for Facebook. Same thing with Twitter, things like that. I mean, Twitter is much more chronological, obviously, but with Twitter, you're gonna get a better idea of when your audience tends to be on Twitter at a certain time, so you can more optimize your posts. So discover and track what's your more successful post. Using a content calendar is going to help you do all 5 of those things.
That's fantastic. Thanks for walking through that. And I want to come back to that point on really looking at the data and the analytics to see what is most important. But let's get into this idea of how to do it. So we've got the reasons why, but the practical steps of how you go about doing it, I think are really key for people who don't have that content calendar, don't know where to start. So last week we talked with Stacey Yates about audiences and picking which communication channels based on the audiences. And here you start off your content calendar discussion when talking about how with audiences. Again, that's the number one thing to look at. So can you explain that? Why is that so important with a content calendar for social media?
It's important because using the example earlier of posting about the 65 and older church bowling league onto Twitter, that's a waste of time. Your 65 and older bowling league's not on Twitter, except maybe a few. So defining your audience helps you to figure out what you want to post on what platforms. So you're not spinning your wheels, but you are using the limited resource of time that we all have in a more effective way, and you're putting your effort into social media platforms that are effective, right? So you could have 12 social media platforms, and that's going to take a lot of your time. And the question really becomes, is there something better than being on Reddit? Is there something better than being on MySpace? Yeah, being on Facebook, being on Twitter. So you don't have to be on every single social media platform. But the ones that you are on, you want to make sure that your communication is effective. And so understanding the audience, the target audience. So is this geared towards members? Is this geared towards not inactive members? Is this geared towards outreach? Is all going to affect how you put a post together, right? I just put out a post about 30 minutes ago on our Facebook page, happy birthday to the LCMS, because in 1847 on this day, it became officially organized. That's more of a to our members type thing, right? That's not necessarily something that I'm going to want to pay to boost so that people in Topeka know that it was the LCMS's birthday, because a majority of people in Topeka you have no connection to the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Right.
So save money, save time, save effort by defining your target audience.
Great. Okay, so moving next, going back to that point, the next point, or that point you had before, that fifth reason, let's dig into that idea of how to research resonating content. I love this idea of really learning from what you've done before, learning what works best, and putting that into play for your content calendar. How do you go about doing this?
The first, I call it internal and external research. Right now, kind of revamping the content calendar that I go through, but by some of this and seeing if there's some things that we can do different. And so kind of going through this. So if you have the resources to create videos, what videos are effective and what platforms are they most effective on? So when you're looking at doing things, just Google searches. There's tons of information out there on how to make posts more effective and more likely to be shared, more likely to have somebody like it or take the time to pause and watch it or read it. And so you need to know that. You also have, if you have a posting history on your social media, you have ways. You go and you look at the analytics and you can see of the posts that you have done before, the types of posts that you have done before in your audiences on those social media accounts, what has been most effective. And so you can kind of cross-reference that of things we might want to do or things we're doing, how to make them more effective, and what has already resonated of the things that we have done. And so again, it just goes back to saving that time, that effort, and money, that you're not putting a whole lot of effort into something that's going to be liked 15 times on Twitter and that's the death of it type thing.
Yeah, you don't want to be wasting your effort when you don't get the results. So this next part, I think you're doing your best St. Paul impression here, talking about tent making. But you describe mapping out major events, and these are the tent poles of your content calendar. Walk us through some of the things that are on your content calendar that are these tent poles that are kind of outside the church year. These important things at Christ Lutheran that you may not be, that our audience may not be thinking about, but could trigger some thoughts in their mind about what are their tent poles.
Well, you took the first half of my conversation, because the first tent poles that you do is obviously the church year. Christmas, Easter, Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, all those kind of high holy days that we all observe. And then it could be congregational anniversaries that are coming up that year. Reformation 500, right? That next year is Reformation 501. Nobody's so excited about October 31st, 2018 as they were about October 31st, 2017. Yeah, right? We don't have t-shirts, coasters, and all the flags and all the works type things there. So are there big events that only happen this year that you kind of put in there, and then you can put kind of some of your fun stuff in there. So National Cookie Day or Ice Cream Day, something to just kind of lighten the mood type thing. Is there a retirement coming up? All right, well, you might want that on there. If your pastor 25 years is retiring, put that on your content calendar, because that's information to put out on social media that really could be geared towards like inactive members that do have a connection with this pastor and would probably want to be there for his retirement, be there for maybe his last few services. So some of those things, Mission Month, Stewardship Month, kind of what does your congregation do? So, for example, there's a congregation here in Topeka. They have a mission smorgasbord that just happened every April. That would be something you want on your content calendar, because you're going to want to start leading up to those things, but by giving that information out. And no, it's not just like you wake up on the Sunday, something's happening, and then announce it and expect everybody to show up, right? You announce things beforehand. So serious things, reoccurring things, once a year things, and just lighter things. Just a kind of a good, healthy mix. And again, how often do you want to post? Because how much effort are you going to be putting into things to make those posts uh, will help figure out. And so once you kind of have those big things, that's your tent pole, right? Um, so we're not necessarily talking about all the little things here, but the big things. These are the things that we're going to be working about here. So if National Ice Cream Day is also Ash Wednesday,
Probably
Ash
ignore
Wednesday's
that one.
probably going to win out on that one. But I think you kind of, if National Ice Cream Day is June 2nd, is there anything important happening June 2nd? I don't have June up in front of me, so if there is, I apologize. But
Maybe
off the top of my
VBS in some
head,
churches,
nothing.
but
So National Ice Cream Day might be a great day to put there on June 2nd, because that is something you can tie into. But you want to make sure you get your kind of your scaffolding there or your tent poles there before you flesh everything out. Make sure what you're going to be working around.
well, and what you mentioned before, that idea of consistency and Twitter Tuesdays, that really makes it easy for your audiences to know when to look. So if it's not coming up in their feed, they can go look for that. And we've had success with these videos, having them every Thursday at 11:30. It works well for us because it becomes routine, but it also works well for our audience because it's a routine for them. And so I love that idea of picking those temples first and then building out your consistency with the things in between. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, the last point you have kind of ties this all in together, and it's fill out and assign. Assigning these
Yeah.
the different pieces of content, social media content to other people. And the way I see it, it kind of hits all your whys. Not only is it helping you organize and helping you delegate, but it's saving you time. Is that kind of how you see it as well?
It is. It is. Again, you don't want three people thinking. If you have three people thinking they all have the same job, the job's not going to get done. More than likely, because they're going to assume that somebody else does it, or you're going to have three things that go up all at once. So assigning it so you're not running over one another, figuring out, okay, so what happens? Are we doing anything special for the sixth Sunday of Easter, or not? So kind of filling in those times where not necessarily a major thing is going on. So if you have a Twitter Tuesday, you're not going to necessarily have a tent pole on every Tuesday. So what are you going to do on those other Tuesdays? So this is where that fill out comes out, and then the assigning who is doing what and when is it due, because they're gonna want to know that, so that it is organized, because that's the point of a calendar, to be organized, right? You look at a calendar to figure out what's happening on what date. So if it's amorphous, it's not going to be an effective calendar.
Good. Well, so we got
And,
the
and
why.
then it can,
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean
yeah,
to cut you off there.
well, also this filling out and assigning, it's a time to be brainstorming. So it's not just you having to, if you're blessed to have volunteers or other people helping out, it's not you coming up with every single idea, but getting input from everybody and kind of deciding it as a group, and who might be doing what. Because it also helps if you're going to be on vacation, or if somebody else is on vacation, and, like, let's say you normally do Facebook, but if you're on vacation, I'm not expecting you to be doing Facebook when you're on vacation. So we
Or a
need
more
somebody to
practical
cover those
situation.
posts.
Like
Right.
you as a pastor,
Yeah.
you're going to have things like funerals. We talked about that offline, about how that can interrupt things. So filling in those gaps for the unexpected too, I think, is key.
Yep. Yep.
Well, we've gotten through the why, and we've gotten through the how. Before we get your final thoughts on this, I'd love to ask our audience if you have any questions for Daniel, if you have any ideas that you've put into your social media calendar, your content calendar. You can put that in the chat. One of the questions that did come across is there a way to rewatch this afterwards? And absolutely, we're going to keep this on our page. It'll be that same link so you can go back and watch it again. And then we also put it in our resource center after the fact. And that's resources.concordiatechnology.org. So a couple different ways to watch that. And we'll also post a link to the blog post so you can go in and see this all in detail that Daniel has described. It's a great post, and I encourage you to go take a look at that. So Daniel, before we wrap up and take a look at any questions that come up, do you have any final thoughts for those who are convinced and ready and have the know-how on how to build a social media content calendar? What advice would you give those people?
Just a couple of quick tricks here is to color code. So you can either do it by who is doing what. So if Amanda is, she can have all her things as purple, and Joe can have all his things as green. Or what I would find more effective is color code by platform. So Facebook is orange, Twitter is green, YouTube is blue. So when it's on the calendar, you can see very quickly what platforms a post is due on. And then scheduling posts. A lot of the social media platforms now allow you to schedule posts. Take advantage of that, so you don't have to wake up at 7 a.m. on Facebook to hit your 80% thing, your 80% target audience, but you can schedule it, because it allows you to put it ahead of time, especially if you work towards finishing it a couple days early, so you can schedule it on there, and so you can be a little relaxed. The one thing to be wary about with scheduling posts, though, is and this is my frustration with Facebook. Facebook punishes third-party schedulers, so you have to schedule for maximum reach. You have to schedule all your posts through Facebook, and so some social media does that, and it kind of sucks, because if you want to put the same post out on various different social media or links to it, it does help to have one of those third-party posters where you can just say, okay, I want this on these accounts at this time, and just schedule it all at once. So being aware of what social media does not punish a third-party poster and what social media does, but scheduling the post just helps quite a bit, so that you're not, again, I had the post, but I'm scrambling at the last minute, or my computer died, or it decided to, install an update and restart, and it's going to be an hour, right? I've had that happen to me before when I sat down to write a sermon, and I was just like, okay, all right. So you don't get those nasty surprises at the last minute.
That's right. Well, and thankfully, Facebook does allow you to schedule within it, and they don't penalize that as much. But with what they've done to the algorithm, it's hard anyways. And so just making sure people know to go to your page to look for it is a great way to do it too. Well, thank you very much for... sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, the one last thing is that a content calendar is not static. You don't have to plan out a whole year at a time. So figure out how much you want to plan out, and then you can add to that. But it's a large task to sit there and try to plan out a year. It's much easier to do 3 months or 6 months. So bite-sized chunks, but just remember that you have to keep on adding to the back end of it, so that you don't go through 6 months and be like, oh, okay, so what are we doing now?
Yeah, that's that kind of idea of a living document, and especially if things come up too. You don't want to waste a good post that you've prepared when something comes up that causes you to not post it. If there's something more important that comes up at the last minute that you have to share, you can always adjust it and share those previously scheduled posts at a different time. Well, good. I've got a question here from Lisa. It says, he mentioned the lectionary series from CPH, and it sounded like it incorporated into Google Calendar. How is that done? I'll print out the lectionary series, but I don't think I know how to do this. Thanks. I'll go ahead and post the link to that page in cph.org, and there's instructions there for how to do that. And if you have any troubles with that, our support team here at CTS would be happy to walk you through that, because if you haven't done it before, it can be a little bit tricky, but it works really well, like Daniel said before. So Good. I think that's
I find it easiest if you do it through your smartphone, by the way.
oh,
Because
good
I always do
advice.
the iCal, but I do iCal into my Google Calendar, and it's just like that.
That's
But
awesome.
that's just my experience. So
Well, you've been using it for several years, so I don't use that honestly, just because I'm not as tied to the lectionary as someone like a pastor is, in terms of what we do with our content. So I thank you very much for that advice. Well, good. Daniel, thanks again for being on today. Thanks again for writing the post, and I'll look forward to speaking with you again in the near future as you've got more insight to share in this world of technology and ministry. So thank you for watching us today, and be sure to tune in next week as we've got another great topic. I'll be talking with Andrew Osborne about multiple cameras in a worship setting. So that'll be another great topic. So thanks again. Have a great day.